Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. How are you? I am. I hope you guys had a great week. Um, this has been daylight savings time week, so I know y'all been tired like I've been tired, right? It's been crazy, cray for the real. Record now, please. So I know it's been crazy for the daylight savings time. It has been cray. And speaking of daylight savings time, we're going to talk a little bit about what's really going on with the government and why they felt the need to say that we should or should not have daylight savings time. And what exactly happened to the bill that they was going to pass. And I guess I don't want to say bill, but they were going to pass this law that basically said that they were going to do away with daylight savings time. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that because I find it very interesting how not so much that everything has to be put, through a process of where it has to be approved or declined or whatever, but just the fact that it's always something that we have to go through to get to something else. But one thing is that the law itself was initiated quite some time ago. Like a lot of people believe it was done, daylight savings time has something to do with farming. And that's a complete and total myth. It does not and did not have to do with farming. Basically, the reason why daylight savings time came into effect, I mean, it was many years ago in that um, there were several reasons or several attempts, I should say, at trying to make daylight savings time inactive or active or the reason it became active. So, one thing is, uh, gosh, can y'all believe it's the second week of November already? Jiminy Crickets. I cannot believe it. So, I have to keep up with my little dates of what I have. And I just realized, oh no, it's not the second. Today is the ninth. Can y'all believe it? Jiminy Crickets. So, wait a minute now. Where is it now? Usually, no. See what I'm talking about? Y'all don't see. Y'all don't know. Y'all don't know what's going on. What's going on? Oh, what's going on? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ay, 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 ay. Um, I know that, maybe you don't believe me or whatever, but I come over here and I set this shit up and I get it all ready for you. And every single time, I don't know where that devil is out there, but you know what? You're not going to win because you don't know who you're fucking with. So you can go ahead and hate on me if you want to and not appreciate what I'm trying to do because you're not doing it. But go ahead and hate. I have a better team of representatives than you do if this is the kind of shit you wishing on me. Even though I really don't even believe in that. I don't believe that if you wish me bad, I'm going to have something bad happen to me. I don't believe that because I feel like there's nothing you can do to me if I don't believe it to be the case. But neither here nor there. I'm going to resend it to myself. I'm just a little aggravated because I set everything up to have everything working the way that it should be today. And for whatever reason, it's not, I can't find it. I can't find my shit. I can't find my stuff. And nobody has access to my email but me. But for some reason, it's not here. Then, on top of everything, any other time, delete draft. Any other time, everything is straight. I don't have a problem. But for some reason, today, I'm having a problem. And I'm irritated. And I don't want to talk about this every time I come on the air. But it is what it is, and it's going to be what it's going to be. So, anyway, that's my rant. Just not going to do it. I'm not going to play into it. I'm not going to play into it. I meditated this morning and I had a good old morning or whatever. Can't tell you what it is. But in a move to combat national energy crisis in the United States, then back in 1973, President Nixon at the time, he was like, he signed an emergency daylight savings time bill into law in the late 1973. And it was an attempt to cut demand by extending daylight hours. And it's more recent than you think because Benjamin Franklin is credited with coming up with the idea in 1784 in terms of that of daylight saving time. Even Germany um, was the first country to basically try it out in 1916. So basically, daylight savings time did not have anything to do with farming, like a lot of people think. President Woodrow Wilson first made it a law in 1918, but it was repealed 7 months later. So longer and lighter days were supposed to save energy and reduce traffic accidents and help people become more active and not be as sleepy. But clocks really started to roll back in 1916, like I mentioned, when Germany became the first country to observe daylight savings time to conserve fuel, according to the Congressional Research Service. Now, some scientists believe that the effect of DST was last up to 2 weeks, would last up for 2 weeks for most people, right? And then after that 2 weeks, no longer, and we can attest to that, right? We can pretty much say, you know what, that's true. It takes me about a week or two to get my body back on schedule, and then I'm up back where I need to be. But why didn't it happen? So no major legislative changes to daylight savings time this year happened because they weren't able to enact it this year, meaning they weren't able to um, vote on it. So the clocks on Sunday, the 5th, this past Sunday, obviously still observed daylight savings time. But the federal law is prohibiting states from switching to a permanent daylight savings time. And some states don't even recognize it as it is. But changes to the federal law include the Sunshine Protection Act. So that's a new name that they've given daylight saving time, but it's saying it's protecting the sunshine. So it's a new law that called again the SPA Sunshine Protection Act, and it's not yet become up for vote in 2023. So they ran out of time, and before it actually came up, because of course so much other shit's going on in our world. So they basically didn't have time to vote on it with the anticipation of it perhaps happening next year or maybe not happening at all. But again, with that being stated, the Sunshine Protection Act is a proposal that the United States federal law would make the United States daylight savings time like a permanent situation, meaning that it would no longer change twice per year. And then the bill itself would be proposed during several sessions of Congress. But again, they didn't get around to it. Senator Rubio's Sunshine Protection Act would eliminate the change of clocks to standard time um, in those 4 months. In some, basically, it would be enacted and you would not fall back in November and you would be able to enjoy your full year of daylight savings time instead of only 8 months. So this bill does not alter or change the time zones, of course, but at this point they haven't made any changes. But like I said, there's some some states that don't even acknowledge it, but no formal vote took place, and there's several states that have passed their own proposal of it to make daylight savings time permanent. The federal government has not yet taken on the issue. But a couple things, just us playing about it. There's 10 fun facts that I wanted to kind of share with you about daylight savings time, and one of them, when we talk about you know the thought basically behind the early morning swap is pretty simple, according to what we talked about earlier, that most people are expected to already be at home and in bed, and that time won't bother many people if they're in restaurants and bars. And this was at 2 a.m. when they were like, let's make 2 a.m. the time. But it's also likely that it doesn't affect those who have early shifts at work. So they were like, let's do it at 2 a.m. And then they're like, wait, I thought it was daylight savings time. It sounds odd, but daylight savings time you know, is that really like the correct saying of it? Though we can't understand why it feels confusing. Um, it wasn't started to help farmers. Like I said earlier, that's complete myth. But basically, farmers had a lobby. This is where I think people are getting at. They had a lobby that campaigned aggressively against daylight savings time, to be honest. And that is because it gave them one less hour in the sunlight to spend in their crops and to get them prepared to be marketed to. So to this very day, many farmers don't like it because basically cows like to be milked on schedule. And so when you're moving the clocks up and back and so on and so forth, it disrupts them. And the farmers in the United States lobbied successfully to stop daylight savings time after World War I because it wouldn't go back into effect until the next World War. So, anyway, like we said, it started in Europe, and then people think it may have helped conserve energy, but between 1974 and 1975, the entire country went on daylight savings time year round to combat the energy crisis. So, with that being said, there's 10 little fun facts that uh, 10 things that you didn't know about it. And that those are a couple of things, but not everyone observes it. Like I mentioned, Alabama, Georgia, excuse me, Minnesota, um, Colorado, Alabama, Mississippi, Montana, Idaho, Louisiana. I said Alabama twice, but Ohio, South Carolina, Utah, Wyoming, Delaware, Maine, Oregon, Tennessee, Washington, and Florida. Um, these are kind of like 19 states that have enacted legislation or passed resolution in favor of the year-round daylight savings time. So anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell as far as what's going on with that. But it could be bad for your health. According to the Atlantic, I was looking at this today, that time shifts might be detrimental to people's health who suffer from seasonal affective disorders. And unfortunately, if this is the case, it could create depression. Now, some people have depression that they get when the sun is not up. So that's the reason why they say that. Excuse me, I have allergies. Sorry about that, guys. But they have depression that kicks in, and when it kicks in, it creates this problem with um, the seasonal change, and that's because it changes their sleep cycle. And it turns out that the change could even be linked to higher risks of heart attacks, car accidents, and even malfunctioning medical equipment. That's crazy. But how sometimes you're like, how this weird phenomenon happen? And lo and behold, it has something to do with seasons or weather or time changing or not changing. So that's pretty cool. But it could cut down on crime. That was one of the positive aspects of daylight savings time. A study by Brookings Institute should have done a study about daylight savings time, and it reduced robberies because they tend to end up happening um, under the cover of darkness. So anyway, I'm not sure what's going on with the connectivity, but with more light in early evening for people to head home from work, they're less likely to have that threat. And what's the latest porch chatter? Basically, we're basically talking about the daylight savings time, everybody. That's our porch chatter for today. But we're just saying not everyone observes it, and it's more recent than most people realize. But it started in Europe, and it typically happens around 2 a.m. So anyway, that's pretty cool information, and it's really awesome to have a little bit of information and to have some fun facts that we learned about daylight saving time. But the one thing, key takeaways about daylight savings time is that clocks will continue to fall back like they did on the 5th of this month, this past Sunday. The federal law prohibits states from enacting permanent daylight saving time, and proposed legislation to change federal law, like the Senate Marco Rubio's Sunshine Protection Act, has fallen in 2023 despite gaining momentum in 2022. The momentum just fizzled out. So nobody did anything about it this year. But dozens of states, as I mentioned earlier, continue to consider proposals to adopt either the permanent daylight savings adage or the permanent standard time. Yet, no states have adopted a legislative change in 2023. So there are people that are like advocating for it and hoping that it will take place, but it hasn't. But without new movement on the proposal changes, America should expect clocks to continue to change into 2024. So right now, that's what the big hype was. I don't know if most of you had heard about it, because a lot of people were like, hey, are we observing daylight savings time or not? And the reality was, no, we did not observe it because our legislation did not get an opportunity to pass on it, to vote on it rather. So we didn't do it. We did not do it. But anyway, I just thought that that was cool that it was a myth, because just the other day someone told me, oh, I thought I had something to do with farmers. And I was like, oh, really? And they were like, yeah, you know. So then I was like, this would be a good little topic for us to engage in, because I'm trying to figure out, did it really happen or not? So anyway, it didn't happen, and it wasn't because of the farmers. So we can nix that. But for the most part, that's what we're talking about today on Wishes for the World with Dina Marie Live. And we'll be right back here in 10.5 seconds. Well, not really, but in a few minutes to start our trending topics. So give me one moment and I'll get it reeled up, folks. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be right back for our next segment.